So I'm going to call a newcomer up to the stage, so please be very supportive. This is his first time telling a story at Mothup. And then after he's done, we're going to do like a short, like 5-minute intermission. So if you have to go to the bathroom, you should just like be in your track stance. So when he's done, you can sprint back, okay? So can I please welcome to the stage, Doug? Yeah.
Kano, Nigeria was founded in the 8th century, and in the 11th century they walled the city. It's always been the end of the caravan route across the Sahara Desert. And Kano is where I lived for 5 years. My first time in Kano, I arrived by train, and people took me on a little night tour through Kano City. We entered through one gate. There were camels waiting outside the gate at night, into the city lit mostly by kerosene, where there were goats sleeping by the roadside, little stands with kerosene lanterns, and men walking the streets in white robes. Never women, because women were in Purdah and had to stay in their houses. And it was just an amazing, amazing sight to me, just out of a storybook. Absolutely like nothing, no place I had ever been. And I made a vow that I would feel at home in this city. The city was made of mud. And so my idea of being at home was to live inside the walls in a mud house. But the Nigerians had a different idea for me. They gave me a house free of rent because I was a school teacher, and all school teachers were supposed to live in these nice houses. And the house was outside the wall. And every white person lived outside the wall. Only once in the 1,200 years of the city's history had a white person lived inside the walls. And I decided that I was going to be the second white person. My house was made of cement, had a roof, bedroom, kitchen, circular driveway, and a detached garage, which I didn't need because I drove a motorcycle. But to me, it wasn't Africa, it was California. I had never been to California, but it certainly wasn't my idea of Africa. So to make things worse, the school where I taught was inside the city, and I drove my motorcycle through the Nasrallah gate every morning to go to work, and drove home outside the walls. So I sort of put my vow in the back of my head. One day, about after 8 months when I was there, an American friend came up from Kaduna. Kaduna is a 20th century city, and I said to her, "You've got to see Kano at night. It's just fabulous." So I put her on the back of my motorcycle, and we drove down the road, and we kind of stopped in one spot, and somebody came up to me, and I recognized him. He was my tea dealer. Tea is very important in Muslim society because they don't drink alcohol, and tea is the big social drink, and this guy was a Lipton tea distributor, so he was pretty well off. And I was there with my friend Monique, and his house was right by there, and he invited us in. He would never invited me in. He invited Monique and me in because I was with a woman. It was okay to go into his house because his wife was in the house. And his house was not just made of mud. The living room was 2 stories tall, and the light from the kerosene lantern barely made it up to the ceiling. And his wife was very gracious. And I said to Aliyu, was his name, I said, "I want to live in a house like this inside the city." And he said, "Okay, I will help you. But first, you need the Sultan's permission." I said, "Okay." Well, it turns out I needed to get an audience. I needed to get into the palace. I needed to get an audience with the Sultan. And it turns out that the Sultan's secretary was a graduate of the school where I taught. So I managed to get an audience with the Sultan and put on the best clothes I had, went to the palace, went into the audience room. The Sultan was there, and I complimented him as much as I could, and told him what a wonderful city this was, and I wanted to live in the city. And he said, very royally, "We have no objection." Okay. Well, I went off to Aliyu, and I said, "The Sultan has no objection." He said, "All right, I will find you a house." I said, "Please find a house with electricity." And contacted me, found a house. So I went and looked at the house. As soon as the landlord saw the color of my skin, he remembered something. His brother was moving to Kano and needed a house, and he was going to use this house. It wasn't for rent any longer. Okay? So next week, Aliyu contacts me again. Found a house, a traditional house made of mud in the city. Okay, we go look at it. This one was cool because it was 2 stories, and the top story was the husband's bedroom, and it had 3 doorbells, one for each wife, who had rooms down below. And as soon as the landlord saw the color of my skin, he remembered his son was graduating from school and was coming back to Kano and needed this house, and it wasn't for rent any longer. Okay, well, I saw we weren't getting anywhere, and I said to Aliyu, could we look outside the walls for a traditional mud house with electricity, and maybe that way I'll get to live in this type of house. I won't be inside the city. So Aliyu contacted me. He had found a house, and this was outside the walls, but it was mud. It was traditional shape, traditional house. A traditional Nigerian house is the exact opposite of a traditional American house. An American house is a house in a yard, and a Nigerian house is a yard within a house, and be walled all around, of course, because you don't want people looking at your wives who are in the house. So we found this house. It was mud, and it was traditional, and when the landlord saw the color of my skin, even though we weren't inside the walls any longer, he remembered that he needed money, and the house wasn't for rent, it was for sale. So I turned to Aliyu. Now this guy, he's the Lipton tea dealer. He's just simply being a friend. There's nothing this guy's gaining out of finding me a house to live in. He spent all these weeks, we've just run into all these dead ends. If he finds another house, it's going to be another dead end. So I turned to him and I said, thank you so much for your help, but I think we should stop here. And Aliyu said to me, no. We'll call this guy's bluff. How much money do you have? And we bought the house. I paid half and Aliyu paid half, and it's in Aliyu's name because I cannot own property in Nigeria because of the color of my skin. So I moved into this house, and I was the first white person in this neighborhood, this section, which was outside the walls. And I was very, very happy there. I came back from work one day, and I had heard that the gendarmerie had been to our block. Nigeria is like France. It has a gendarme, a national police, and a local police. And they had gone to the tax collector of our block, who was Zachary Taylor, not related to the American president. His name was Zachary, and he was a tailor who did upholstery, and he lived across the street from me. They had stopped because they knew he was the tax collector, and they said, we hear there's a white man living in your neighborhood. And Zachary Taylor said, huh? White man? I haven't seen any white man. And the gendarmerie left. Now, I never knew whether Zachary was protecting me, or whether he simply hated the gendarmerie, or he simply was a little bit of an authority in that block and didn't want the police doing anything. But it was very nice to feel protected. A few months after that, I came home from work, and right in front of my house was a big plywood Coca-Cola kiosk. Coca-Cola kiosks sell chilled Coca-Cola for 12 kobo, which is a lot of money for a Nigerian, or you can get a bottle of water, it's also chilled, for 2 kobo, and the water bottle just gets refilled. It's actually an empty Coke bottle that they just keep on refilling and selling. And then they sell sugar and condensed milk, which is very popular, and sardines. So it's just a little shop. And it was right in front of my house. Nobody asked me. And I knew that you sell your Coca-Cola chilled, so I noted. There was the electric cord coming out of the kiosk, going up over the wall into my house. So, okay, I walk in the house, and I see the cord going to one of the plugs, and then I also notice there are 2 neighborhood kids in my house filling up bottles with water, and that was when I knew I was at home in Kano.